Hi, everyone. My name is Armando Casillas. I'm a technology researcher at LBNL. Was moderator yesterday, if you were a part of the Institute yesterday. Um, I am very excited today to be moderating a panel on the arrival of AI in building systems. We were very intentional about organizing this panel in a way where we weren't hearing from, the technology vendors on how amazing their systems are and how much energy savings they can get. And really wanted to make sure that we put building operators and workforce in the center of the focus of this particular panel. We have today some three very, very great guests here. We have Carrie Jackson from Jamestown LP. Carrie Jackson is the Director of Tech and Innovation. She's responsible for the pilots and rollouts across the global portfolio, internal digital transformation, data and analytics, and climate tech efforts. I'll let her introduce herself a little more in a little bit. We have Marcus Elson from Train. Marcus is a product manager in the autonomous control and digital platforms division at Train. I'll also let him introduce himself a little more in a little bit. And we have Kenny Seaton. Kenny Seaton is the central plant manager and energy manager at CSU Dominguez Hills. And he is famous or infamous for his viral LinkedIn posts. If you've seen them, if not, you should go check those out. I'll also let Kenny introduce himself in a little bit. We're starting off really here talking about how different AI technologies are starting to make their ways into buildings. A lot of people have been hearing about generative AI as the sort of the kind of popular topic here. Those can find their ways into buildings, but I think today we're going to be hearing from our three panelists here today on how they are incorporating AI into their personal building operations or their clients' building operations, and how those AI products are helping their respective organization achieve their objectives. Without further ado, I think we'll start with Carrie. You could introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Carrie Denning Jackson. Sorry, that's my maiden name. I am based in New York. I lead innovation at Jamestown, and I've been here 3.5 years. We have been thinking about, AI has been embedded in so many of our products for a very long time. I think that's an important thing to know. It's not necessarily this new and shiny thing, though everyone is putting AI on their website or .ai or whatever it is. But we've had, computer vision with our parking systems, machine learning for things, company I'll talk about today, prescriptive data. So it's all there. We're all excited about it, and it really helps our work a lot. So excited to keep talking about this.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. No, next we'll hear from Marcus. Marcus, if you could introduce yourself and how y'all have been thinking about incorporating AI into your clients' operations, please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Armando. My name is Marcus Elson. Been with Train 16 years and counting, mostly in the control space and now moving into digital. And I think my passion has tied into how we are working with our customers and their buildings and their facilities teams to use AI to control the building more efficiently. I think some of the questions we'll talk about what that really means in practice, but that's the core need that our customers are fulfilling with AI today.
Thanks, Marcus. And lastly, Kenny, please, you could introduce yourself a little more and talk about how y'all are using AI in campus operations, please. Thanks.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kenny Seaton. I'm the Director of Central Plant Operations and Strategic Energy Projects here at Cal State University Dominguez Hills since 2011. I'm always looking for ways of making things better, right? So if, my motto is if better is possible, good is not enough. And so finding something that works is great, but then once we figure it out, how do we tweak it that next step? We've been implementing AI into our chiller operations. Typically, right, we're just using a sequence of operation that is static, right? We set it for this temperature to this temperature, and that's how we run it 24/7. AI is letting us adjust that based off of all the other variables, humidity, weather, flow, tonnage, and it changes every 5 minutes. And we're able to get down into, triple digits on our controls instead of just single. And we've seen a 50% savings. So it's working unbelievably well.
Thanks, Kenny. That's a huge number you just threw out there, 50%. That's we'll definitely ask you to qualify that later on in the panel today. Well,
Yeah.
we just heard from Doug a little bit ago in his great intro about how AI is integrated into different parts of the building operations. I kind of like the way that was laid out. You have the energy efficiency side, we have the FDD diagnostic side of things, potentially optimizing for occupancy patterns. For campus level and building level, a lot of these customers have demand charges. They're really what's driving the adoption of these things are costs, right? So there's a lot of costs that I think roughly in some cases around 40% of a building owner's cost is related to demand. So there's a lot of potential for AI solutions to help with those things. Could one of you or some of you please talk a little bit about what processes or operations you guys have seen improved using the AI technologies that you've been adopting so far?
I can go. I can speak to Prescriptive Data. We brought them. They're a company that helps optimize your HVAC systems, ramp times, so saving us a bunch of money by ramping up later in the day. Earlier, you can optimize based on weather, humidity in the building, occupancy, temperatures, obviously, all sorts of different things. We piloted them. We started talking to them in 2021, piloted them in 2022, and part of this conversation, I think, is on change management and why that took a whole year, but that might be a later question. And then we got some learnings most recently, and we saw significant for us. We obviously want to decarbonize as much as possible. We want to be energy efficient. We really want to save money. We're a real estate company. The major expenses on our budgets are insurance and taxes, then utilities. Utilities is the only controllable expense there. We can't control what we're taxed. We can't really control our insurance rates. So it's a really big deal that we tackle utilities as much as possible. And so with Prescriptive Data, we saw a 260% ROI, and that's huge, absolutely huge for us. We saved 284 kilowatt hours in just this. It was just a 6-week pilot. And we've since, rolled this product out at several other assets. And I can speak more to business model and vendor relationships and what works and what doesn't. But it's been a really fantastic relationship. And again, it's all AI based. But again, I just have to go back to it. At this point, I almost don't even look if you're AI based. I'm assuming that you're doing something with pattern recognition and optimization that uses AI system. So maybe it's worth selling, but I think it's kind of an assumption already.
Yeah, that's a really powerful statement, Carrie. And I think, a lot of companies are kind of front loading with the AI thing, but as we've talked about, AI has been kind of used for a long time, especially when you're looking at something that wants to optimize or look forward to really, get you the savings that are there. Marcus, Kenny, any thoughts from you guys in terms of how y'all have seen your operations improve or change using the AI products?
Yeah, I'll go. We have 3 chillers, right? Peak load, we run all 3 of them. Can they keep up or not? We've done 3 chillers, but last year we only did 1.5 chillers, right? Now, part of that's weather, but part of that is that they're more optimized, right? So if you have two 1,000-ton chillers that are running at 0.35 to 0.45 total plant kW per ton, compared to running at 0.7 to 0.9 kW per ton. That's a huge savings, right? That's going to drop my peak down. That's with the central plant optimization. Now, on top of that, we have a 4 megawatt hour battery that is using AI, right, for predictive for just demand for peak demand shaving, right? So it's looking at patterns and weather and, you know, how we're going to ramp up and ramp down. And so those two have brought our utility rates down drastically, right? 70% of my $100,000 electric bill is in peak demand charges. And so, and my regular electric rate has gone from 12 cents 4 years ago to 28 cents today, right? So we can do everything that we can, right? I can all the energy efficiency stuff, and I can use the same amount of electricity today that I did 4 years ago, but my electric bill is $1 million more. And so, like Carrie said, right, the utility we control, but even that, can we get ahead of it, or can we just keep up with it?
Yeah.
And we need these AI, you know, we have to think about things a lot differently than we used to. You can't just set it and forget it like we used to.
Thanks, Kenny. Yeah, that's really good point there. 70%, that is quite high. So I could see the the incentives there. Marcus, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add, you know, great points from Kenny and Carrie here. I think what the facilities teams that we work with are surprised by are some of the benefits to the productivity of their teams, and even like the human comfort in the spaces that it's achieving. You know, I think sometimes we start these conversations and it's easy to forget that there's always a trade-off there somewhere of energy. You know, there's plenty of good energy conservation measures of shutting everything down or making everybody uncomfortable, but there's a reason that building exists, and we need to work within those realistic bounds. And I think being able to achieve things like better comfort because of some of the predictive nature with how the technology works is a fantastic benefit that surprises a lot of folks. And then second, just like the productivity of the facilities teams, you know, these teams that are used to having to maybe babysit their building to keep it in a sweet spot for the occupants or for the business running in that space. They find themselves being able to be hands off and get to deferred maintenance or get to plenty of the other things on their punch list.
Yeah, that's great, Marcus. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, you mentioned facilities teams and the kind of the productivity that they're kind of experiencing, productivity increase they're experiencing because of the AI tools. I'm wondering if you guys could maybe speak a little bit about who in your organization is tasked with interacting with the AI technology. So you have, you know, Marcus, as you mentioned, a facilities operator who may have a control center of some kind, maybe, you know, 5 or so desktop computers, desktop monitors that, you know, are kind of seeing things. Would it be the facilities operator in your case that is looking or interacting with the AI technology? Who is tasked with that in your respective cases here?
Yeah, I'll start. That's exactly the person, Armando. And thanks for the little dose of PTSD for a pastoral when I think there was 7 different screens that I had in front of me to keep an eye on a campus there. But that is exactly the first person that's interacting with it. You know, the same person who, you know, gets a call, hey, there's something going on in this building, and they're going in to dig in deeper. That's the first person that's experiencing it, and that's the person that's experiencing it day to day. The after the fact, how's it been doing, into like some of the business case and relationship stuff that Carrie talked about, that's the sort of second part. But primarily that person running the building, yeah, whoever gets that hot cold call, whoever is that first tier support for keeping the building smooth.
Yeah, great.
I would add to that actually it's, in my opinion, it's 2 people, right? You know, if you're gonna do the AI, you got to have a champion, because, you know, we're moving the needle here, right? And so now, if you're lucky, the facilities control specialist, who Marcus just talked about, is that champion, but not always, right? Sometimes you're going to have to pull him along, right? You know, and so, you know, in my case, I'm the boss and I'm the champion, so, you know, it makes life a little bit easier. But what we see and what they see, it's not that they're afraid of it. It's just they're stuck in, this is how we operate our buildings, right? You know, and why do I need that? And so sometimes you need to be able to spell that out. And so you need that middle person also. But at the end of the day, yes, they're the ones that are going to have to be comfortable. Look, do I let it go? Do I kill it? Do I do, you know, this or that, and kind of leave it alone and let it do what it's supposed to? If that facilities control specialist isn't comfortable with it, then, you know, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah, yeah. And Carrie, you had kind of alluded to it in the past.
Yeah, I can speak to this.
Yeah, go for it.
I'd say it's even more people. It's a lot. So we have our building engineers, and I'll get to that in a second. We'll have our property managers. We'll have the regional property managers, the asset managers. You know, then there's my team, tech and innovation, and I work very closely with our head of ESG. And it's kind of this whole web. So often my team gets inbounds from venture, from our peer group, conferences, vendors themselves. And we're often the ones with the relationships, and we're often the ones sharing the concept to our teams. And so not always the case. A lot of times, you know, the property managers have their own relationships. They're working with whatever vendor for EV charging or access control. But my job within the company is to find technology, pilot it, and roll it out, or be a source of information. The challenge there is that I'm not an engineer by background. I am more of on the tech side. And so it is often very challenging for me to, you know, even speak the same language as the building engineer. You know, there's so many different things I have to cover that I often don't know the nomenclature or the specific terms. And that automatically puts me in a view from the building engineer's point as well, what does this person know? So I have to sell that person. I usually first sell the asset manager and the property managers on the cost savings, you know, can we split this through our CAM fees? Can we, like, how is this going to work if, like, we also have a whole loan thing and we're in a tough spot financially? Yeah, you know, how do we do this with fines that we might get? So it's this whole really long negotiation. That's why it's something like prescriptive data took, you know, a year to 2 years. Then when we installed it, we definitely picked the wrong property because we had so much pushback from the building engineer. And we thought we were running a pilot, and we checked in like a month later, 6 weeks later. He kept turning it off and not telling us. And so it took about 8 months to finally convince, you know, and he was on vacation. Like, I'm not putting this person under the bus, but this is a very common thing, very common. And it was really, really hard to do. And, you know, we had to say, look, this isn't about undermining your job. In fact, we're actually saying, wow, you've done such a good job running this asset manually. Like, wow, how impressive that you've been able to have tenant comfort and you know, keep the thing going. But now you'll have these better systems. And like the argument is you'll get more time back in your week. You'll be able to do other things. But it's a really tough process. And then the last thing I'll say is, you know, everyone wants to scale up and keep going, but you're going to have this problem at every other asset. Even if you have the head of property management saying, guys, we got to do this, it doesn't matter. You still have to sell the person on the ground, because they're going to be really pissed if it adds more time to the day, or if it's broken, or if they deal with, you know, sometimes you get vendors who don't know real estate. And so they have to deal with these teams and they get frustrated. So
Definitely.
I always say it's never the technology that is hard to find. There are so many great technologies, and I wish we could pilot hundreds, but it is working with the teams and getting to know them really well, so you have trust.
Yeah, no, that's a great summary there, Carrie. And I think there's definitely something to be said about you know, the success of the pilot or the deployment of the technology is a function of how of the entry point and who's being brought along with that, right? So I think, Kenny, you mentioned having a champion and somebody that kind of takes it and kind of runs with it and sells it, but then to be able to kind of, you know, I think, Carrie, you're talking more of like a top-down approach, whereas Kenny, you're boots on the ground. You're actually bringing it in from your perspective, right? So it's important to get the right people into the conversation early on, and I think overall that would be more of a recipe for success, right? So I'm wondering, on that note, could you guys maybe speak a little bit about any, personal lessons learned or recommendations you may give others that are kind of attending the call here that manage buildings or, know or maybe interested in installing or talking to an AI, using technology and want to install it in their building or set of buildings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Go for it.
the biggest thing is, how are they going to protect your equipment? And so the one thing that we found, Armando, if you would bring up that slide, I think that would help. AI is only going to do it. Well, not only it's going to do whatever it wants unless you set guardrails for it, right? So the AI, it's going to experiment, right? It's going to see where's the best place to run your equipment. If it's true AI, right? If it's truly looking at things and coming up with the best solution as opposed to just a linear equation, then it could do different things. So what we found was that we just created the guardrails, right? We did a couple things so the guardrails on this, we're controlling our condensing water temperature set point with the AI. That's what's getting us the huge savings. We say, hey, look, I never want it to go below 60 and I never want it to go above 90, and you can do anything you want in between. And worst case is I might be inefficient while it's doing something in between if it didn't work out the way it was supposed to. But it's not going to break anything. It's not going to take over. The other thing is I want to know that you're working. And so we call it the heartbeat. And so if it doesn't get a signal from the AI processor every 5 minutes, it's going to shut off. And then because my operator, was like, hey, look, I don't know if I trust this stuff, or, hey, it's really not doing what it's supposed to, and I can't get a hold of the AI guy, then I'm just shutting it off. And so this sequence here in the middle with the heartbeat and the master enable, either the heartbeat doesn't work, it stops working, or my guy shuts it off. All it does is revert back to our old programming, right? So our old programming that we thought efficient, but now we see that, it's not even close compared to what it's doing now. If you look at this particular screenshot, my old programming would have been using a set point of 68.6 degrees, and the Facile AI is doing a almost 75-degree set point on the condensing water. Well, the average person is like, look, we can't run that high. That's counterintuitive, right? Because everybody tells me that, if we run the lower the water temperature, the more efficient. But the truth is, the lower the water temperature, the more fan horsepower and so the AI is able to find out what that medium point is. But again, go back to, look, here's my kill switch so my guy can shut it off. Now you can get buy-in from your facilities control specialist. Here's my heartbeat so that I know that it's working, so it doesn't just lock up in some weird state and it just, runs at the same temperature for 3 days. I know this because we experienced this as we were learning all this stuff, right? And here's my guardrails because I don't ever want it to try and get, 50 degrees or let it go at 120 degrees. I think if you think about those things, it's going to make that implementation and that buy-in from your team a lot easier.
That's a great suggestion, Kenny, and I really appreciate you coming with a screenshot. I'm sure the audience, those that are familiar with control logic and building automation systems, also appreciate seeing this slide here. So thanks for putting that together. Carrie, Marcus, any thoughts from you guys? Lessons learned, recommendations you may give others on this call that are looking to incorporate AI technologies in their building operations?
I think I'm just going to sound like I'm being redundant, but I would say get the building engineers on as soon as possible. Have the vendor walk through something like what Kenny just described on kill switches and ranges. So there's great comfort, on-site visits, things like that. That will get things moving, ideally.
Couldn't agree more. That's where I was going to go. Is that stakeholder can be the blocker, and to sort of explain, like, they're successful in their job because they know how the system works, and here comes this new system that they don't know how it works, and so for them to understand it in their language and get confidence on it is crucial.
Yeah.
I I would add to that though, also to make sure that you put the data points in so you can prove it, right? Make sure you have, good data, right? Electric meters and tonnage and flow and that kind of stuff as we're talking about plants and stuff, right? So that, because as your operators see the savings, right, then it just inspires them to want, well, what if we did this, and they can help create better thought processes for the AI vendors too, right? But, hey, what if we look at this?
Yeah, definitely. I think, Kenny, you're making a good point. I think, the solution is only as good as the current state of the facility in the building, right? If you have a lot of existing, faults, a lot of existing issues with data intake and data communication, maybe not great meters, the data that the AI intakes is not going to be great, or it's going to be suboptimal, and it's maybe not going to make the right decision. So I think it's important for folks to know that whether it's a really, best in class role-based control like Guideline 36, or something that's like optimizing based on the data you're giving it, it's really only going to be as good as whatever the current state of the building is. So I think it's important for folks to know that if they are looking to adopt some of these technologies, there needs to be a checklist of things they should probably do in their buildings as well. So I'm wondering, I think we're getting to like maybe the more spicy part of the panel here. But I'm wondering, for folks that are out there listening to this panel, do you all think the industry should be concerned that AI technologies are going to take over, your classic HVAC technician or controls technician's jobs? Should they be worried? I know there's other industries like computer science industries that have seen that already. There's a lot of AI art out there that are maybe putting graphics designers out of jobs. How will AI technologies affect the job market and the job prospects for those that are have been in the industry for a long time or looking to get into the industry?
I can start. So I'd say, one, we don't know because it's still so early and it'll evolve so much rapidly. Two, I think things that require people being physically on site using their hands, that's very hard to AI itself. Like you can't get an AI haircut, for example. So I think a lot of stuff is really protected in that sense that a human has to physically do it unless we get to the point of a robot. At our company, we have done a lot with AI from like a chat perspective. And it has saved our teams a lot of time. And the way we always phrase it is it's giving people back hours in their week. We don't like saying it's shaved off X amount of hours, like publicly in any internal newsletter or when we talk to people, because that implies, job at risk. But the phrase, giving you time back in your week and how can you have time for more value add. I mean, that's what we think so far and that's what we've seen. But like, honestly, I don't know. I don't know if it means we'll hire less of XYZ role. But I do think if you're working on site physically installing things, coming up with concepts where you have to install things, I think I don't think you're at a risk.
Yeah, AI is not going to replace your mechanics, right? Temperature sensors are out of whack. AI is not going to do its thing, right? Somebody's going to have to physically go out there, right? And AI, we don't have AI robots that are going to climb inside an air handler and free up a damper that's not working and that kind of stuff. In fact, if anything, as it makes our buildings more efficient, it raises the bar, right? And so once you start hitting those numbers and showing those energy savings, now there's the onus on you to keep that up, right? And it's not just the AI, but now your technicians are spending more time on fixing those rogue zones, right? Like, how many of us have a building with 100 VAVs and no matter what we do, 8 of them are at 100% all the time, right? It's just, and why? Well, we can live with those 8, right? But eventually, if you can catch up with these other things, now you can start, hey, you know what? I got time. Wow, all that was the damper had slipped, or maybe it needs a new reheat coil or something like that. But we're so busy putting out fires, to try and just maintain an energy level that once the AI goes in, now we have more time to start fixing those one-offs, that 20% that we could never get to.
Yeah.
and then the efficiency goes up even farther, you know. So I believe that the AI that we're doing here is actually increase the productivity of my mechanics, and we're getting more stuff done, but we're not replacing anybody. We're not going to lose anybody because of this. We're actually going to need more people, and we're going to need more qualified people, right? Because now as things get smarter, we're going to need more training and, you know, more facilities control specialists. Before it was, you know, somebody that could turn a wrench could do half of most of the stuff, and now we're needing that more technical knowledge, right? So the younger generation, you know, is able to get into this and work through things more. So
Well, let's put a pin on that because we have another question on that. But Marcus, please go ahead. I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I'll just add, you know, to bring the sort of two answers together, like Carrie said, that giving people time for the more value add work, that's the real transformation that I see there. And so as people ask me this, I think about it as, if I look at any given week, how much of my work do I feel like was the right work to do and was like value add to me and my, you know, department, company, whatever. If that's a high percentage, then I have no concerns that I'm going to be replaced by AI. If a bulk of my work is sort of moving data from an email to a spreadsheet to a different system, or putting together some simple other, you know, things, or answering very straightforward support tickets, then I am going to look at that, you know, and I would always be looking at my ratio of sort of value add work versus non anyway. But for me, that's the key to answering that question.
No, yeah, that's great. And I'm sure, you know, folks on the call, especially ones that have worked in buildings, would definitely appreciate the prospect of not having to put out fires all the time and spend more dedicated time doing things that matter. So yeah, so I want to get back to Kenny's point. You mentioned, Kenny, something about, you know, potential the skill set of folks maybe needing to be a little different. Do you all think that you know, the advent of AI in building operations, do you think this changes the required skill set for the incumbent workforce, or you know, the workforce that is now kind of getting into the industry to kind of adapt to the AI technology, or the ability for the AI to optimize?
think it makes it more important that they understand computers more, truthfully, right? They have to be able to, they have to get a data analytic mindset, right?
Yeah.
In the past, you know, it was mechanical, right? You could go out there and speed it up, slow it down. If nobody complained, there wasn't a problem. And now, as we start running our buildings more and more efficient, you know, hopefully the AI, you know, can start doing some of the fault diagnostic for us. But we still need our people to be able to look at that data. And we're not teaching them, you know, a building service engineer is not being taught how to look at the data. He's being taught how to fix a device. And the other thing that I see is that as we make our buildings more efficient, and it's the AI is helping us also, is, but we need to teach, what does that device, how does that device interact with the whole system? Not just, okay, this is an actuator that opens and closes, but no, this is an actuator that's connected to a damper that is saving on the chill water control valve, which is saving on the chiller, which goes back to saving on the pump, you know. And so I don't think we're doing a good enough job of explaining the overall, which will drastically upgrade our technicians and what they understand. But analytics, we need to spend some time explaining to them, how do you look at a trend? How do you look at all these different things, and how do they interact?
Thanks, Kenny. Marcus? Sorry, Carrie, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Oh, I was going to say, Marcus, go. I agree. I think it's the data scientist piece. I also agree with what Kenny said of knowing the systems overall. There's like, if you put something into a chat GPT, it can hallucinate a lot. You know, you could ask it a question about, I don't know, World War II, and it'll make up something, but you'll say, oh, actually, I know this. That's not accurate. I'll check it out. So you still need to have people understand the underlying systems. AI is not good enough yet to avoid actually knowing your stuff. So I think that's still really key, especially, yeah, the step back holistic, because so many companies just sell a point solution because it's much easier to sell to a company. It's much easier, frankly, for me to pilot it than a bigger full building system. That's a lot more work. And I'd still say the team, yes, you need great data scientists, but you also need great people who can sell, who understand real estate and can be really, really tactical and smart in partnering with real estate to come up with the best business model. Like Prescriptive Data has been fantastic with us in coming up with business models where they push CapEx into OpEx. We split the cost with our tenants. We give them some of the upside. Like they're really good reacting to the fact that there isn't a lot of CapEx right now for us, but we still want to work together. So you still need really great business people.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, depending on the role targeting, on the business side, a little bit of that technical know-how to help get stakeholder engagement is really critical. And then back to sort of Kenny's points, I'll just throw like an example of the understanding how like the piece of the system interacts with the whole. If anyone who goes in and is bearing down on one subcomponent of like an HVAC system could do an amazing job optimizing, that piece and completely submarine the rest of the building without that knowledge. And so I think it's that systems knowledge and how those factors interplay is critical. And then I think a piece of that is understanding where the data and the real world meet and can differ. So I can optimize, I could be looking at how a system is running. It says, oh, that heating valve's open, so I must be getting heat to that space. But to know that, well, if that heating valve was actually open, we'd see a delta between here and here, and I don't. Therefore, that's a real world problem, not a data side or a problem that my model can be taken care of. Those are as important as ever.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as I hear you guys talk, it sounds like there's already a piece that HVAC technicians, folks that are getting into the building management industry may already have some training or curriculum based on that. But I think I'm remembering what Peter had said earlier today about how there was a point where building management folks had to get really well versed in IT, right? There was kind of an operating side of things and mechanical side, but then when IT came into the picture with DDC controls and things like that, the workforce had to transition to that to some capacity. Right now, we're getting to the place where now the data and the digitization of these systems is upon us. Now, I think we need to kind of transition the workforce to be able to understand these concepts and understand things at a system-wide level, as Kenny mentioned, right? I think that's really important. So I wanted to leave some time here to kind of let the audience ask some questions. I think there's a question here from Peter about, is there any training provided with the deployment? So Marcus, Kenny, Carrie, like when you propose a technology or when you decide to adopt the technology, how are you bringing along the facilities managers or the folks you interact with in terms of what the technology can do and how the folks that are interacting with it can best use it and use it in the right way?
Yeah, I can start here. Any project, any implementation, especially when it comes to the facility, should include training. Nothing worse than a beautifully engineered approach and a ton of diligence put into procurement and everything, and then it just doesn't get used to its fullest extent. To the sort of buy-in conversation, I think what we've seen is we're doing so much of that conversation to get buy-in and trust ahead of time that by the time we get to real world, it's just a little bit of additional, okay, and that thing we talked about, here's where you click to do that. It's just sort of the icing on the cake at that point is what I've seen in practice. Would love to hear what Kenny and Carrie have to say though.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, I'd say for all of these companies, they have customer success people that will work with us and will come on site. They'll do as many conversation with Prescriptive Data. We always have like at least a weekly check-in when it's initial onboarding. It'll probably be a couple a week, and then finally they scale back to monthly. But it's very detailed conversations going into the engineering specs. No company would give you something without that support.
Yeah, definitely.
for us, I would say that, honestly, it's not that much training though, right? It's not like we're training somebody to how do we turn it on and turn it off and change the set points and do that, blah, blah, blah. Because the whole reason we're putting this stuff in is so that it happens all by itself, right? So the training was, here's the button to push if you don't like what's happening. And monitor this so that if it's offline, we know it.
Yeah.
There's no more training than that, right? At the end of the day, it's like, and then it's about, keeping an eye on the data, right? It's like, is it getting better or is it getting worse? They don't need to be computer program hacker coders, whatever you want to call it. That's why we're bringing in the AI, right? To do that stuff. So, when I put my new AirCo boilers in, right, it was, an hour training session the day that they started up, and it was like, oh, this is how you do this and this and this and this is this sensor, and you got to look at this and this, and you can't remember half of that stuff, and it actually matters. But now with the AI, it's like, look, it's working or it's not working. Did it get better? Did it get worse? Here's how you kill it if you're not happy with it. That's the extent of it. It gets a lot easier. Go work on other stuff.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's great answers from you three. And I once again I invite the audience to continue to put questions in the chat. I've seen that Carrie, Marcus, and Kenny, you guys have done a great job of real time answering some of these questions. I'm going to pull out these questions actually because one, Kenny was the only one who answered, and I think it's a great question, especially for the Best Institute folks here. What do we, as this is Robin McClellan, he's asking, what do we add to our curricula to make our graduates prepared for this change, right? So, I mean, at least if you can imagine you're developing curriculum for training HVAC or building operators, technicians, what module would you put in to kind of to accommodate the advent of this technology?
If this, then that, a module, right? If this happens, what's its circle of influence, right? A thermostat in a room can only move the damper and the reheat coil up and down, right? Now, forget about the control sequence of that, but a reheat hot water control valve, its only purpose is to open and close. But what does it influence? It makes like what Marcus said, right? Did the temperature go up or did it not? Too many times, the technicians are going out there looking at stuff, and to not to embarrass anybody, but it's like sometimes when your car doesn't start and your wife says, the radiator is low on water, and it's like, it has nothing to do with that, and I'm exaggerating to that extent, but that's where we're at, right? Hey, this room is always too cold. Well, did you shoot a temperature gun at the register and did hot air come out? And if it didn't, what are the components that go back to that? Right, exactly, right? We teach how to put a meter on and tell if a thermostat is working or not, right? You should have this much resistance on this temperature sensor, and you should have 0 to 10, and this actuator opens and closes. But once that happens, what does it affect? So that if something's happening, you can go back and say, hey, wait, these are the 3 things that could affect that outcome. I think that component is missing in the training.
Thanks, Kenny. Go ahead, Carrie.
I would overall I don't know what's taught in these schools to train people up. I've never been in that experience. But I would do the basics of what AI is, what generative AI is, what's machine learning, what's computer vision, just so people are smart on the topics. I think it's important to understand the distinctions and some of the underlying pieces.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Carrie. Just an overall taxonomy of AI, what is it you're seeing every day? I think just making heads or tails of that, I think at the very least is a great place to start, right?
Yeah. And what are the considerations and pitfalls? And again, hallucination's a big deal. So, or ChatGPT can't really do math well, things like that. What do you need to know?
Yeah. Marcus, any thoughts from you on that?
Kenny said everything I was going to say better than I could have said it. So I got nothing more to add there.
Definitely. Yeah, thanks. So I have a couple of maybe rapid fire questions here. So Peter's asking, Kenny, how does a technician know when they're not happy with what they're seeing, which I think is very I think what Peter is kind of getting at is, I think there may be some training to have the technician understand what's expected and what's not expected out of a certain control sequence, right? Or,
Well, I think you have to have a target outcome, right? If you're going to put AI in, what's it solving for, right? We're solving for better efficiency, or we're solving for better comfort, or we're solving for peak demand, or whatever, right? And so you install it. That's how you know if it worked or not, right? Did it get better or worse? When we did the AI for the chiller, our target was kW per ton. Period, right? We wrote the program got written so that it could produce the best kW per ton.
Yeah, and I think from what you're saying, Kenny, it's important for everyone that is interacting with it to know the goal.
Yes.
And to know, what success looks like and what not success looks like, right? And then,
well, exactly. That's a better word, right? The goal has to be clear. We have to create clear goals. Any plan, what's the goal? What's the outcome? And am I going to hit that goal, or am I not? Or am I not hitting the goal? Did it get worse, right? Did I go from 0.7 to 0.9 all of a sudden,
Yeah, definitely. So there's one more question here, and I think it's addressed to Kenny, but I can ask all of you guys. From what you understand, the AI system AI technology that was overlaid on top of your building systems, is this something that's, just a kind of an overlay, supervisory overlay, or did you need to change anything drastically within the infrastructure, the BIS infrastructure? Did you have to install hardware? Like what was the level of kind of invasiveness that, in terms of adding new things into your building for the AI tech to work?
For ours, it was I wrote a gateway that could talk to the Metasys system and talk right through the BACnet trunk. It just writes straight to the point that we tell it to, and we implement that instead of our point. And so it's not an override. It's just, it looks like if I had pulled up a different programming screen and wrote my own program, only this is coming from a different location, which is why we put in the heartbeat and the kill switch. So there was no hardware or anything that had to go in per se.
Thanks, Kenny.
We discovered situations where, the temperatures were off, or there was something wrong, and it revealed something wrong with the building itself, like certain ventilation, or what humidity set points, what have you. And so that was some of the power of something like prescriptive data, is it gave us diagnostics to assess physical problems.
Yeah.
Marcus?
I'll just to sort of tie those two together. I mean, I think our customers find it critical to be able to implement it on, whatever they've got. And so minimal invasive is pretty critical. And so, I'll just add that as long as there's sort of an expectation around what's going to happen if there is a subpar building, you're going to get the best possible crappy rooftop. Okay, there's nothing that's going to change the mechanics of something that's way out of spec or declining.
Great answers, guys. I mean, we are at time here. I want to thank you three once again for a great panel. I feel like my gears are still kind of turning with all of the conversation here, and I hope that's the same for all the participants here, all the audience. So please, if you have any other questions for Marcus, Kenny, and Carrie, I believe their contact info is tied to their profiles on the Zoom portal. So I just want to thank you guys again. I really appreciate you taking the time to discuss this topic, and yeah, we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.